Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I probably should be wearing a suit for this. This is going to be the more serious time since I have on my other channel that's self titled Colin Dawson. Tried to get some of the just insanity off. And I actually let my accent out. I'm going to try to be as kind and polite as possible, and I have a notebook. This is going to be over the Kamala Harris and Mike Pence debate. I think that we do have a certain situation in amongst them. I think that Kamala Harris came off audibly, and granted, yes, I was listening to it while I was doing a lot of stuff out there. They say that she had a lot of body language, a lot of charisma, everything else. I think audibly, she came off more the winner. And I was making these notes as I was listening to everything. And I think visually, Mike Pence came off as the winner. And it's also one of the reasons why they bring up the fly. And I will say, audibly, I do believe that this situation was that she seemed to follow the law, or the law of the moderator, a bit more. And she is very good over character reading analysis. So she was very easily able to set up the situation, even as though she is the younger of all the candidates out there. And in this, I'm going to say up front, in no way do I think Biden will not serve 8 years if he gets in, or as many years as he can, and that there is no such thing as any of the presidents in this or anything else are going to be looked at in any way in any of this analysis, that these are just 2 years, someone's going to kick the bucket, have a heart attack, stroke out, or go to sleep, die, or anything else like that. That's been discussed on other sources of media. They can say I'm not the Associated Press. They have their opinion. They have an outlet. I have my opinion. I have an outlet. As it is, visually, the pleading father and boyish charm of a nice shepherding person coming out there and trying to hold what could be the future out there. And it's very visual what he was doing. And this is a technique that is used, just like she is using the patient sage technique and doing the slight nod and everything, and saying that she gives, in a way, a blessing to it. They can say that she's protecting her throat. That would be a separate hand situation in what I know of from places. And one can say that in and of itself, Mike Pence is led by Christian faith or something else like that, in kind of the infant holding and presenting and lifting up and trying to talk it into creation, and can you not see and take this from me? Like he trusts them, offering his child for you to hold. And that's his dream for the future of this nation. Just as she does her kind of sage situation. And they are very much opposite from the debate that happened with the presidency. And one could say that it's some of her background from India and certain other places out there. And it shows a very big cooperation between faiths. And I think that the reason why I would say Mike Pence won visually was because he turned more and it seemed like he was walking towards Kamala. It could have been the way the cameras were. They're showing this way and that, and he was turning towards, even with the giant bulletproof glass in between them. I will say that just the simple fact from the presidential debate, Vice President, you've gone past your time. Vice President, Vice President, even as controlled as it is, and people do go past. And it was light years from the other debate. That right there, in the audio sense, gave Kamala the win. And in no way am I trying to say that this is anything of a expanded Nixon-Kennedy style debate. I will say the childlike youth looking up, a little defiant, even though she is shorter. And I think some of it is a way of her trying to pull people in, because she does have this one look that she gives that's kind of like the childish play that most people, and I'm a short person, I've realized I do it without even thinking about it. To anybody who's taller, and it does work on people who do have that type of situation. And she's a prosecutor. She interviews people, and that's just something of her nature. But in a way, with everything, with how police or law enforcement is being looked at, I think it could have, with certain people that would notice it, like me, and knowing her background, that she's a district attorney, could come off a little bit visually not there. Then the papal shuffling, and straight up to me, it's like, I'm probably sure it's like, well, I'm cleaning up shop because there's not really anything else to say. And that might have been something that she planned visually into it. But I just think back to the jobs, or the time my mom or somebody else, when I was starting out, grabbed my papers and shuffled them over, and I just didn't have it together. And I looked very foolish about things when I thought I had everything worked out. And I couldn't really say anything after that because they were in a different order and I didn't have enough time. And as it is, there was a lot of pro moves, but it was a little bit, in a way, bad, so to speak of, on both sides for everything. And it's just my look over it. Ideally, there seemed to be a very concise, controlled understanding, questions answered and responses. And then, as it is in sound, Pence is running over, and it's Biden tactics. Verbally over controlling everything else. It could alienate the youth vote in a way. And it could alienate certain things, groups, however you want to say, of over controlling. Then you have, with everything, visually, you really need Kamala in. And yes, they came out with the mansplaining and everything else. And one realizes that without seeing her visually turn and look towards him, look up in a couple of times, things such as that, it seems like he's, yes, a strong man, a kind man. But as soon as he runs over that time limit, in a way, in that pleading sense, it's more like, you could possibly say, oddly, it's almost like, do you not see this? But yet, I think there's a quote in Mark where it's moving on to the next generation. And it's almost a little pass the torch over to her, which does give her a lot of situation and is skilled politics. but it can come off because most of the people in the USA, I don't think really are skilled at politics. And it's like they're almost too smart for their own good. So, in the fact that Kamala kind of went less is more, and the visual situations that he had were very, very strong and to the point. And if he had just had a few less interruptions and came more concise to the point, he would have pulled the um, wise sage tactics that she was trying to use. And then the issues that were there, I think because of the way they both did their attack situation, I think they were actually able. And I've heard this before, which is why they didn't go with this moderator, even though the moderator I think was incredibly strong in just a different situational fashion. The issues that mattered were lost in a moment, similar to the future of the USA and our national pulse of desperation, apparent in questions and demeanors of the politicians. But in a way, it seemed less of whatever they needed to do. They had the questions there, they had the demeanors, they showed that very much, but yet it was, in a way, kind of like how everybody has their fish bowls now. And the fish bowls are growing and they're not connected. And in a way, I think the moderator chose the questions and everything not so much against any one group, but to say openly, are you all aware? And it was a lot of theater. It was a lot of kind, good intentions. And you can tell that they can't pull these poses, these types of acting and holding people if they didn't care. The other ones in it, I've got a thing for the presidential debate that I'll try to do different in a way. But just in saying, I've got two questions that I think probably should have been asked in all of this. I know these will probably never get to any person out there. And here's the questions. Question 2. One of two for Kamala Harris. And if I sound too lecturing, it's just how I understand how to put things together. Kamala, police, that includes all the way to the Secret Service, that is law enforcement and everything. What would your response be to each and every version and form of law enforcement saying that there is not a trickle up effect if there is something of major police reform at the federal level? That there is not some way that where it closes off the police. And yes, being a former district attorney, I would really like to hear your answer on it. That the personnel in the police are not squeezed up into the FBI, CIA, Secret Service, military. And it has a run up towards a higher point and leads to like squeezing the bad apple, as people keep saying, all the way up to the top. And bad apples, they squish, they go up. Just somehow or another, that one bad apple, if you got a bushel basket and it's on the bottom, all of it will just squeeze up to the top. How do you say that you would go through in an action plan of stopping that from happening and contaminating not really higher forms of law enforcement, but there does seem to be a food chain when everybody needs to be working together? Second question. This is going to be long, and this is a very personal, probably, question. 2 weeks before you withdrew to 10 days, Fox referred to you as Native American. I know that there's a lot of really fast walking around trying to look back at the teleprompter, everything else, and new reporters are just overly happy. Did you know, feel, or experience anything such as if you could think 30 seconds and say, then there was something, one could say electronic fatigue, or like you thought falling into some movie or thing you read, listened to, seemed to be like something was leading you a little bit more or something else out there over this? And do you think that in saying that, even though it's probably something benign by the reporter, there was just on around the 10 o'clock hour, people always say they throw everybody to 10 o'clock hour and you just get chewed up, and you were not genuinely speaking or saying yourself, and you seem to be somehow led or something else like that? Do you think there is such a thing as the possibility of future situations with electronic problems being used on minorities or electronic assault in some way? I would bring up certain situations over other politicians that I wonder if they might have sat too close to a computer, and they say, like in high school, John McCain got a small brain tumor, from what I understand. Some other politicians also seem to be a little bit stuttering, or it's like their jaw doesn't really feel too great, or they may have a little vagus nerve tremble. Moving on from those two questions. 2 Pence questions. Under wildlife management, how will your combined administration address the nutrient argument with removal of fuel in wildfire zones and rebuild? And in rebuild, would you view the areas as strategic defense for the USA, like in the movie 1985, if people fled in the riots to the forest and the national grasslands? That many of the areas now are under extreme fire and situations of that nature. And if this would be something that some country looks at as possibly a good way to set up a preemptive invasion to the United States, knowing basically only our culture through movies, since we do keep a lot of things very secret. Would you think that forest fires could be a future type of espionage warfare? Since they are kind of our last line of defense with the grasslands. Second question, I'm probably going to be told that I'm softballing this one. Space Force. The year is 2020. My cousins had me watch, whenever they babysit me, a cartoon show, Sea Lab 2020. That being said, and how the future of the pioneering need of the United States of America, colonization, resources, and even just navigation into space, the ocean floor, any of the technology that we ever heard of that by the time 2020 rolled around, kind of like the benchmark for us kids to get to. And, I'm the slacker. I didn't make the flying car and the Jetsons. I understand. I know that one's coming to me. Possible, how, where, when, and what tools in society that people and the public can hone, find a good reference to, anything else. What is it that they need to do to go into and make this happen? To have themselves be part of this new part of the USA, and see if we can't reconnect over something else that's there. That in a way we kind of set a benchmark for the public and us kids. Cheers, everybody. Thank you. Hope everything's good for you all if you ever hear of this. And there's my take on everything for the vice presidential debate.